Thank you for joining us today on the Respectful Divorce Podcast. Our guest today is Rick Kahler, and we're so excited to have him. I didn't even know I was one of his groupies until recently learning that one of my favorite books he authored. So thank you for joining us today, Rick.
Yeah, it's my complete privilege to be with you today.
Well, it is certainly mine. And I'm so glad our paths crossed 2 weeks ago at the Collaborative Divorce Texas Spring Conference, where you were an incredible speaker and connected a lot of dots for me. And so I wanted to share who you are, what you do, and see if that doesn't resonate, and I'm sure it will, with lots of other divorce professionals and potential divorce clients. So would you begin by giving us a little bit about your background, your education, your experience, and how you got to doing what you do now?
Well, we'll try and shorten that up. My background is I really got into the business world through real estate, and I decided at one point in time there's nobody out there helping people with their money and their money decisions that are independent of selling them stuff. So I actually started doing what's called fee-only financial planning back in 1981, before any organization had been formed that proposed that type of a fee structure. And through that, I became a certified financial planner.
And if we can talk about that for just a minute, because that does come up in a lot of my cases. And I was not immediately aware of that back in the days when I first started in the mid-'80s. And my experience has been that certified financial planners and fee-based financial planners are fiduciaries to the full extent of the word. They do not sell product, and so they don't have an interest in what the clients invest in except how it will help the client. Am I saying that even close to accurately?
Yeah, that's close. One of the problems now is fiduciaries have kind of been co-opted, and so you can be a fiduciary even though you're selling a product.
How do clients distinguish then? How can they become informed consumers about that?
A perfect question. You can ask them if they have a conflict of interest.
Okay.
And what I encourage people to do is ask them to give you something in writing that says what percent of the gross income of the company comes from commissions and what percent comes from fees. If some's coming from commissions, there is an inherent conflict of interest.
That's really interesting, and I thank you for that. I had a high wealth divorce in the collaborative process early last year, and there were obviously a couple of people vying for that role of managing these people's money. And one said they didn't charge for X and Y, and then another one, who is nothing but fee-based, said, let me see their fee structure. And it was hidden. And I thought, that's just deceptive. And it troubled me greatly. And those people are very well known and have lots of millionaires for clients. And maybe those clients don't know it. Maybe they don't care. But it worries me if they are not making an informed decision.
Absolutely. And they've done something else that's a little clever. They've made popular the term fee-based.
Oh, yes.
Fee-based means you can sell commissions.
Oh, my goodness.
You can have commissions. Fee-based means fee and commission.
Okay.
Fee only means no commission.
All right. That's great to know. Thank you for that
distinction. And
distinction.
so they advertise we're fee-based,
yeah.
And people confuse that, which they intended it for it to be confusing, with fee only. So you really got to do your work.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that. I guess I'm more surprised that there's not more regulation on that, because it really is quite a bit of deception to the consumer.
There certainly can be, and there is regulation through the CFP channels. They are very particular about who calls themselves fee only or fee based. But if you're not a CFP, you're not subject to living up to those ethics or those standards.
So if clients decide they want a fee-only financial planner, having a CFP would be the way to go?
Not necessarily, because CFPs can sell stuff.
Okay. All right.
What you might want to look for, if you wanted a fee-only planner, financial planner, look at the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors.
Okay.
The acronym is NAPFA.
Okay.
You cannot sell anything and be a member of NAPFA.
All right.
That's the best way to know. But a CFP, you just simply ask them, are you fee only?
Great to know that versus fee-based.
Correct.
Thank you for that. And as lawyers, we have always relied on what we think people's credentials, philosophies, ethics are, and we aren't always educated on that, especially in family law.
Well, can you imagine there's people that think that all lawyers are the same?
True.
And they have the same education?
Absolutely true. Yes, and that's the lesson here is we know better. So let's dig back in. I got you off track just a little bit. I took you exactly where I wanted you to teach me about that, but you were telling us about your educational and experiential background. So if we can get back to that, I know everybody would like to hear about your background.
Sure. Well, in 95, I discovered there was something that emotions can be part of money decisions, and started getting curious about that. So I started partnering with therapists, and we started doing week-long workshops on what became financial therapy. Then in 2009, I was one of the co-founders of the Financial Therapy Association. And we started I think it was 2015, we started the Certified Financial Therapist certification. And so that we're in our 17th year now, and that's really become a thing.
And is that for
financial therapy?
Who are the people that would come to that? Would it be financial planners, therapists, both, lawyers? Who else would come to that type of presentation?
Well, most certified financial therapists are either licensed therapists or financial planners that have some certification like the CFP or a master's in financial planning, which I did pick up along the way, or they have some formalized training. You don't have to have both to be a certified financial therapist. Now, like a lot of things, you can say, I'm a financial therapist and there's no regulation around it.
Yes.
You can say, I'm a financial planner, there's no regulation around it. You can say you're a therapist and there's no regulation around it.
Which is frightening.
So it's up to us as consumers to ask the questions, to dig a little deeper and say, okay, tell me what you mean.
Yes, and we need to know the questions to ask. And do those questions elicit a defensive reaction from people that are not fee only, for example, or are they pretty candid with that information?
Well, they certainly could. If I'm not what you're asking me or hoping that I would be, you could get a defensive answer.
Yes.
Right? So for example, ask somebody who says, I'm a financial planner. I just had this week. And I said, are you a certified financial planner? Well, no.
Oh,
but
yes.
That's not necessary to be a good planner. Well, there's some truth to that. But certified financial planner is the low bar in being a financial planner. At least you've got a floor and a base.
Yes.
Similar to a certified financial therapist.
Yes.
Certified to having similar to a law degree, except I don't know that you can hold yourself out to be a lawyer without being a member of the bar.
You're not supposed to, for sure. But yes, I think to educate the consumer so they know the questions to ask, so that they can get the service they think that they are receiving, which is all about the informed consumer. So that's very
Absolutely.
exciting information, and I will expound on that in my blog work going forward now that you have helped me clarify those terms. And it's true, there may be some people that are fine in doing that, but with peer review, which I assume the CFP and certified financial therapists, they have some level of peer review, which means someone has blessed them with their education and experience level.
I don't know that the person has. I mean, you there is an association. You can lose your marks, right? Mm-hmm. They've had to pass, multiple exams and things like that. I don't know that it's peer reviewed in the way that their journals, that what you write for the journals would be peer reviewed.
Right. Our credentialing in Collaborative Divorce Texas, for example, isn't peer reviewed in the same way as journals, not that high level, but you certainly have to prove a certain amount of proficiency in cases and have references stating that you have done this many cases at least.
Right.
And these people wouldn't send references on your behalf if you hadn't lived up to some level of expectation.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you're expected to have experience. Like, I think for the certified financial therapist, you need, I think it's 500 hours. Mm-hmm. I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 hours for the CFP of working as.
Yes.
In the profession. But there may be some letters of recommendation that you have to get along the way. I'm not 100% sure. I tell people when they're looking for that type of recommendation, I said, well, I can get a letter from my mom, my sister, and my wife. Does that count?
I know what you mean. Well, if we can dive into your books, as I said, I have been a fan and didn't even know you when I have been such a fan of the wisdom of the financial wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge. Would you just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the more recent publication?
Oh, I think that was my second book. I loved it because I have always loved the story of Scrooge. Mm-hmm. And the story of Scrooge really is a story about transformation.
Yes.
And so it has 4 distinctive parts. It has his awakening, or the time that he is confronted. It then has a formula that's a very fascinating formula. He goes into his past, then he goes into his present, and then the future. And in the past, if you read the book, he trembles, he laughs, he experiences fear, all of these emotions, and looking at his past that sound like therapy. It sounds like what the point of therapy is to look at your story and start to be an observer and starting to connect the dots and starting to work through unfinished business and emotions that have been capped for decades. When that happens, a person can become more present. And then he sees how he shows up. He looks at the Cratchit family talking about him. He sees what people are saying on the street. From that becoming more present, he can see the future that he's on to create.
That's wonderful.
The issue that we have in finances and is that we often try, in many things, we often try to get present before we've gone into the past. Oh, all I need is more information.
Or more money.
Or more money.
I've seen that too.
And then that will solve all the problems. And the problems are locked away in a compartment deep within us that are driving our money decisions 24/7.
And are those the money scripts you're talking about? And do those come from trauma associated with money in the past?
Yes. Primarily, most financial behaviors that are not helpful to us, that are hurtful in some way, come from trauma. Now, that's a loaded word. It's a very popular word today. When I first heard that, I kind of poo-pooed it because I'm like, oh, come on. But I have learned that trauma in the way that I'm presenting it is on a continuum. So you have big T trauma, like a horrific accident, a terrible sickness, disability, murder. Mm-hmm. And then you have little t trauma, which can be the most innocuous thing. But if it's repeated over and over, like death by 1,000 cuts,
yes,
it can be what's called complex trauma. So trauma is, in my belief, at the root of money scripts. And money scripts are typically formed by parts of us in a protective manner, especially when we're kids, to keep us from going there anymore. Like, for example, I've worked with clients who just have to spend. If money hits their account, they have to spend. And many of these, we've taken it back to when they were a kid, the money they saved disappeared.
Oh.
Their piggy bank was taken in many cases by parents that needed the money. Their bank accounts were raided by either parents that needed the money or who went bankrupt, and they took everything. And they learned, and they made some of the folks didn't even realize that their parents had gone bankrupt. That's why their money disappeared till decades later. But what they learn as a kid is, I've got to spend this.
Yes. And that's what I love about therapy, and I just never really fully understood it in the financial context, is therapy unlocks the secret code of why people's behavior is what it is.
Bingo.
And this, to me, this is huge for lots of reasons, but one reason, and I think you and I discussed this at the conference, I don't know what percent, and I don't mean to over-exaggerate or exaggerate, but I think the vast majority of people that come to me is because they did not understand their own and or their spouse's financial philosophy when they married. And when we do premarital agreements, it is so much like a therapy session, in my opinion. It's premarital therapy in the financial realm, because what we sort of unpack and drill down on is what are their financial philosophies. And they either decide they're not a good match, or they learn how to merge them, or other tools that we can give them so that they can move forward if they choose to. And I think nowadays it's become a lot more popular with gray divorces, but young people still benefit from it, even in people that have no money, because at some point they're going to. And does it all get spent because they've had a trauma like you just described, or are they savers or spenders? That's a really important question for us to mine, if you will.
So ironically, just before we popped on, I finished writing a section of a paper that I'm writing on dating, money scripts, and the internal family systems.
Huge.
And I was writing on why money is rarely discussed in dating.
That's exactly right.
And, it's huge. And one of the primary reasons that this couple that's madly in love will get divorced are for financial reasons.
It's not fun to talk about that. That's not quote unquote sexy, but it's fundamental.
It's fundamental. And as you pointed out with doing the prenuptials, so important. And it can be so, you said it, it's not romantic at all, and yet so important. Think of somebody going into business. How many people would go into business together and not have some type of operating agreement or stock agreement? It's almost unheard of. It's considered negligence if you don't.
It would be reckless.
And yet we go into these business partnerships called marriages
for a lifetime
without a thought. Yes. Of having such a thing.
And that's one of the reasons I am a fan of the premarital is I think sometimes I say what's old is new again, because before there was romantic marriage, people married under a contractual agreement, whether it was for international diplomacy or just that's how it was done in those days for families that needed merging. And when people get a little off put by the premarital, I like to think, okay, now we have romantic love and people get married because of that. But to bring in that old piece manages the expectations. So at least all the ones that I have been a part of, I get reports from the clients years down the road, and they're still very happy and satisfied with what we did. And that's so gratifying as an attorney.
Nice. Well, that's a huge, huge service to be bringing into the world and to people.
And it's at a time when they're really in a good place versus in a divorce where everybody is so mad, angry, and when they're in a good place, while these conversations are very uncomfortable and there's often tears, they still usually get to a consensus that is a managing of expectations that they're contractually willing and comfortable agreeing to so that they know what to expect in the future. And I do think that makes less problems later on. So your other book, or your other two books, and to me, they have some similarities, so I'll need to get you to clarify and distinguish them for me. The most recent one that I am aware of is the Coupleship Inc., but I have also read Conscious Finance, which you said was an earlier one.
That's my first book.
Okay, all right.
And Coupleship Inc. is one of the latest books.
And how would you distinguish those, and what do they each cover, if you'd like the audience to know more about those?
Yeah, Conscious Finance is two parts. One is the emotional part, and one is the dollars and cents, gets into how do you kind of do financial planning. It's the only book I've ever written that brings in more of the tactical.
Oh, yes.
And the first part, the more emotional part, follows some of the money story at that time of my co-author, Kathleen, who is now my editor. And that's where I talk about, actually, which I spoke about at the Collaborative Divorce Texas, was when I was going through my divorce and we were doing mediation.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd pause a session. I'd be so triggered. I'd go home and take a little plastic bat and just bang the crap out of a pillow. Then I'd go back. I'm kind of discharged, and we'd be able to go again. And then we'd take another break, and I'd go home and do that. And at that time, I was in therapy, and I was called psychodrama therapy, where this would not be an usual way to discharge anger. But so yeah, that's where that story comes from, was doing that, which got us successfully through 22 hours of meditation.
And where were you living at the time?
Or mediation, I should say. I was in Rapid City, South Dakota. I've lived here in Rapid City all of my life. And my current wife was born and raised in, she was born in Wichita, raised in Arlington, Texas.
Really? I don't think we discussed that when we were
We did not
here.
discuss that.
Well, the reason that I ask about what state you were in is Texas may be the only, I don't know if it's the last standing archaic state, but we don't do the 2 or 3 hour mediation sessions that most other states do. Our mediations are still typically all in one day, which I don't prefer. That's our model here. But to me, it's a bit of a meat grinder. You go in with the pressures of 8 hours. You have to have this finished by such and such time, or you're going to have to go to court. And what I love about collaborative divorce and the mediation sessions that most other states utilize is you are able to go and take that Nerf bat and regroup so that you can go back in with a cool head and fresh ideas, and your creativity is replenished versus feeling under the pressure of a one-day mediation. So I really appreciate that you all, are they usually 2 hour sessions?
I would say that would be about right. 2 hours, 3 hours would be pretty long. Although you might go a couple hours in the morning, take a break, and do a couple hours in the afternoon. But our mediation went on for weeks. We had 22 hours into it.
Well, and I expect it's like our collaborative divorce work. And when I make that comparison, I think some people are fearful that if you don't do it all in one day with the time crunch and the pressure of it's going to cost a lot more if you don't finish, not only do they not make the best decisions, but people are afraid if they leave the table before they sign it, they're going to back out. And some people may, but in the mediations that are in 2 hour or so segments rather than one day, and in the collaborative cases, sometimes they do want to change what they've reached an agreement on slightly, modify it a little bit, tweak it, so to speak. But usually it's a more durable agreement in my experience because they have been able to step back and give it some cool-headed contemplation.
That just makes intuitive sense.
Mm-hmm.
That if you, quote, sleep on it, you're going to end up with an agreement that is more solid,
yes,
and authentic to what the people are agreeing to then in that moment. And of course, there's all sorts of emotions and things at play when the couple's negotiating and all of their dynamics. And their coupleship is in the room.
Yes.
And their heads may be nodding yes, and they walk outside and they're no.
Right. And I know my husband used to dread with me but kind of laugh because when I would be on a case that did those marathon mediations, I would always get a call from the client the next day about something that we didn't think of.
Yeah.
And I think that's pervasive within all cases that do the full day mediation or the all in one day or two mediation because they are going to have some buyer's remorse. And I don't sense that in the mediation model that you all have, that other states have, and in the collaborative process.
Yeah, the collaborative process is just genius. It's such a win-win.
Well, and
situation.
There's so much of a misconception by both litigation lawyers and the public in that what I sense from people often is they think it's just a kumbaya tea party where we're all sitting around and being nice, and it's some serious emotions. And the difference seems to be that with the financial planner, the mental health professional, or the financial therapist, we can help them manage those emotions, keep them in the room instead of spewing out with resentment or alienating the children or bitterness for the rest of their lives.
Yes. You have so many tools that are helping and informing the process.
Yes.
That you don't have with litigation.
Well, thank you for your good words about collaborative. We always appreciate that, especially from another discipline of professional. Let's return to your books and what you talk about in those. Financial unconsciousness versus financial consciousness, and circumstances. It's not in the circumstances, but the emotions that you talk a lot about creating the cycle.
Yeah, just it's becoming aware. It's becoming conscious about what we're doing. It goes right back to the money scripts that we're talking about that are operating 24/7 unconsciously in us until we take a time out somewhere in adulthood and pull out all those money scripts and evaluate them. And the average person has 50 to 200 based on our research of money scripts.
And how can people begin to unpack all that or pull those apart and rebuild them in a healthy way? Would it be, is there somebody else like you in Texas that they could call and get advice from, or do you do that kind of work outside of the Dakotas?
Well, I I only work by Zoom.
So you can be anywhere.
I do the work everywhere. There are certainly folks, certified financial therapists, that do that work in Texas. Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, I think the Financial Therapy Association, we had one of our meetings, our conferences in Austin, Texas.
Oh, perfect.
A few years
Perfect
ago.
place for that.
So it's common amongst the people I run with, right? It's maybe not so common in the broad swath of things, but there's a number of things. I think we have some exercises in Scrooge. I'm not sure on how you can start being aware of your money scripts. There's also something out there, and you can find it online. It's called the KMSI-R, the Klontz Money Script Inventory Revised. And you can get online and take that. And it's clinically tested to give you an idea of the bias of your money scripts.
That sounds like that would be a good tool for all family lawyers to use, whether they're in litigation or collaborative.
I use it as intake for my financial therapy clients.
And is it something they can just take online? It doesn't have to
Yes.
be administered by an in-person therapist.
No, you can take it online. It lets you know what category your money scripts fall into, and there's 4 major categories. There's money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. One isn't better than another, but it gives you a clue of how you approach money issues. So that's kind of the start that you can do. I have a book called Facilitating Financial Health that I wrote for therapists, financial planners, and coaches that has a little bit more on money scripts and exercises you can do to uncover more of your money scripts and begin modifying those money scripts.
That's great.
Every money script is true in certain circumstances.
Yes.
You know, when your money is disappearing from a bank account as a kid, a money script of you've got to spend your money or it'll disappear is good advice.
Heck yeah. Yeah.
The problem is we grow up, but our money scripts often don't.
Interesting. You know, sometimes I think when people marry before they're emotionally evolved sufficiently, they get stunted at that point, and it sounds like the same sort of thing.
Totally. Yeah. In fact, we used to teach when we were developing this material that it appeared most people had their worldview of money by 10 years old.
Isn't that something?
And when I'm working with a client, we will often go back to childhood to find the origin of a money script.
And if someone works with you directly, is there a typical number of sessions they would have with you to become more financially conscious?
That's a really good question, because I've had people have big breakthroughs in one session. I've had people that have worked for a couple of years. What I encourage people to do is do 6 sessions. It's kind of like the same encouragement you get when you go to a 12-step meeting. They say, hey, give it 6 meetings before you decide, is this helpful or not? But I encourage people to do 6 sessions, and then you can go from there.
That's great advice. And it's good to know it's not never ending. Some people may go to therapists for their entire life, not because they have mental illness, but for personal growth and helping them isolate issues they want to work on. And they can do it better with a professional therapist than they can on their own.
My therapist calls me her annuity.
I've always thought of mine as I've told her I'm your great failure, and she said, no, you're my great success, because you keep wanting to grow personally. It's not about issues as much as it is continued growth.
Absolutely. For me, it's maintenance. And I've discovered some things about my money story that were hiding in plain sight. And I've been doing this work since easily 2000.
Wow.
And it's just a continual exploration. Somebody called it today, the adventure continues.
Yes, for all of us. And if it doesn't, we have real problems.
That's right.
I love one of your topics in one of your books, and I can't remember if it's in Coupleship or Conscious Finance, but ending suffering by choosing pain, and then the medicators, but the ending suffering by choosing pain. I love that. Could you explain what that means for us a little bit?
Absolutely. Think about it. We spend decades avoiding the pain. We don't want to go there. We live our lives in IFS, we call these protectors that keep us from ever touching on the pain. That's in the past, that's history, that's water under the bridge. There's no point of going there. Well, take a look at Scrooge. That's where he went. That's where the ghost took him, was to the pain.
Yes.
Because unless we go to the pain and process that, we're not going to end the suffering. The pain is there. It's like the Cookie Monster in the garbage can, bumping up on the lid.
Yes.
And the older we get, the harder that thing is bumping.
Oh, my.
And until we take a deep breath and welcome the pain and get curious about the pain truly is not going to kill us. We think it will. But it's going to show us, it's the bell of awakening. It has so much knowledge why it's there. And we make judgments that it shouldn't be there. No, it's there because it's there. And it has something to share with us.
What makes me sad is I wish this were taught in every curriculum in high school, at least by high school, because it would change lives so profoundly.
Oh, absolutely.
Change our financial world.
It's one reason why financial literacy doesn't work. And I just wrote a chapter for a book on holistic financial literacy. And when I read all their chapters, I said, you've got nothing in here that's kind of the core that will make financial literacy work. And again, financial literacy is Scrooge showing up in the present.
Yes.
Without visiting the past.
That's not enough.
And I can think of a gentleman that's worked in California amongst his community, and he gave up on financial literacy after 20 years because we've got to go to the emotional drivers. We've got to visit that first. We've got to look at the pain first before we can clear that and be able then to be in the present. Kind of think of it as a person that has on earmuffs. They've got a blindfold over their eyes and they got their mouth taped. And then tell them to learn something.
That's a great metaphor.
Until we take that off, which is going into the pain, going into the past, you're not going to be present.
Ripping that tape off really can free you so that you don't have the pain anymore.
Yes.
Well, with your 3 books, one of the things I wanted to ask you today was Coupleship sounds like it would be for people either marrying or married or living together to learn how to work together with their financial philosophies. Is there an order that you would suggest these books be read, or a specific context of which book you would suggest when? Or is it like me, I think they should just read them all?
Well, Coupleship Inc., that's my latest thinking, and it also has an internal family systems overlay to it. So for couples, people thinking of being couples, to your point, I think that's a great book. It's a standalone book. I have a bias along with you. The most popular book that I've been a part of is The Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge. But I had a psychologist tell me that he thought it was the best life planning book ever written.
The Ebenezer Scrooge book?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I mean,
So
I think it's just like the original Christmas Carol with what you said about the formula. We ride along and witness someone else's pain and transformation, and that teaches us at the same time the story's being told.
And actually, that book was the basis of the first psychological peer-reviewed study in psychology that showed if they went through that process, which was the process of our week-long workshop, that they made scientifically significant progress over, I think it was 3 or 6 month period, and it was following that protocol.
That's
past,
fascinating.
present, future.
Charles Dickens was a genius.
1843, right?
Yes, and we're still
Amazing.
learning. Now, your seminars that you teach about the financial therapy, I'm not sure if I'm calling it what you all call it in the conferences. Can someone sign up for that that's in the divorce business or in the financial business?
Yeah, I don't have seminars I teach, but I'm invited to come teach them.
And so if somebody wants to find something like that where you are presenting, where would they look?
Good question. I mean,
they should have come to Collaborative Divorce Texas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, look at Divorce Texas. I have reached out with the encouragement of all the people that were at that conference to the international group.
Oh, good.
I just presented for the American Group Psychotherapists Association for a day and did a workshop for them. Maybe in my encore career, because I've just sold a controlling interest in my financial planning firm, I'll start doing more of those things. But I speak to groups of therapists and do workshops like that. But right now, I don't do much that is self-sponsored.
Yes, I know that's very time-consuming, labor-intensive. And so I think that we all just need to look for Rick Kahler's books, Coupleship, Inc., Conscious Finance, and The Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge. And I know there's at least 6 others. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And thank you for letting us have some insight into what we can do by choosing the pain to get transformed into looking at money issues with more health and changing our own lives. Thank you for the work you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. And I do have a weekly blog that I write. Called financialawakenings.com. Financialawakenings.com. And they can go there and sign up for that.
We will put that link with this podcast.
And I have a financial therapy, it's not about the money podcast.
Great. Thank you so much. We will include all of that.
Thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate you.
And I want to say that I so much appreciate and honor the work that the collaborators and Collaborative Divorce Texas does. I was so impressed with that group. Just the heart and the soul of the people there. I really felt home. I'm like, holy cow. I really feel at home with these folks.
Thank you so much for that. We felt that you are a kindred spirit because everyone in that group has been in litigation. And as one lady best described it, she said, we are trained as lawyers to want to win. And so we have an internal dissonance when we win a case. She said she had one where she was jubilant about winning the case, and she went back to her office and put her face in her hands and cried because she knew she had just been a part of destroying a family with wounds that would be generational that would never heal.
Yeah.
And so everyone in that group that you met at Collaborative Divorce Texas has experienced that, and sometimes we still have to litigate, but we try so hard to screen clients and help them know you are out there and Collaborative Divorce is out there to help their families improve, not be wounded and permanently scarred.
Yeah. Well, you are doing wonderful work in the world.
Well, we sure appreciate you, and so are you. Thanks so much, Rick. We'll be talking soon, I hope.
Thank you.
Collaborative divorce is a better way to untie the knot.